Paulo Sotero. He's the director of the Brazil Institute at the Woodrow Wilson International Center for Scholars, and it's always great to see you. You know, the interesting thing is we hear jobs, 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 and you look at the European Union, there's countries there staggering, unemployment numbers. The U.S. still struggling with it. Brazil, it seems like everything's great, and yet we're kind of getting mixed signals, aren't we, about it? People aren't as excited about the economy as they were.
No, well, Brazil is getting good numbers in terms of employment, but for a very bad reason, which is the lack of skilled workers to work on activities that's needed in the economy. It's a very poor performance. The economy is slowing down. It may be that in the first 3 years of President Dilma Rousseff's term, it will be an average of below 2%, and the perception is that the fiscal policy, the management of fiscal policy has lost quality. This past month, Brazil had its worst performance in fiscal policy in more than 4 years, not reaching the targets, the fiscal targets, the savings that the government itself had forecasted.
Let's get to that in just a second. I want to kind of stay with the jobs theme because we've got the World Cup coming, the Olympics. You would think that's going to attract even more jobs. But are they still the same caliber of jobs you're talking about?
No, that's not. There will be jobs in the service sector mostly. They will, obviously, there will be more jobs, but the World Cup will pass. For the Olympics, you may have more jobs in construction, in transit systems, but here is where the deficit of skilled workers is hurting Brazil, and there is a general perception that Brazil is stuck in a sort of a mediocre rate of growth, and that's what worries people.
And so if you're stuck here, and you know what the goal is to get there, and you're talking about these qualified skilled workers, how do you get there? What does Brazil need to do to turn the corner?
Brazil needs to invest more in capacity, in education and infrastructure. The problem is next year is an election year in Brazil. Election year is the year where politicians want to spend money, especially money that they don't have to spend, and that could distort the economic picture in Brazil. I think that's what investors, the analysts, are reflecting when they assume this very pessimistic position on Brazil.
You know, you bring up analysts, and I remember back in June, Standard & Poor's came out with a negative outlook for Brazil, and at the time, one analyst said, actions speak louder than words. In other words, Brazil talks a good game, but not necessarily plays the game so well. What kind of actions could Rousseff take to kind of minimize that?
Well, she just took one action to made an agreement with Congress to really tighten fiscal policy. But at the same time, the same Congress had relaxed what was really a central policy, fiscal policy in Brazil, is the law of fiscal responsibility that discipline public spending in Brazil, what you just mentioned. States now, will not account anymore in the public sector fiscal accounts. This is worrisome. This will continue to be a source of concern for investors. Investments in Brazil, foreign direct investment continues, but at a lower rate, 10–15% lower than in recent years.
Reining in inflation, is that also a key concern?
Certainly it is. The problem is that, there's pressure on the currency. The real is devaluing now. It was overvalued before. With devaluation comes the threat of inflation in Brazil. Inflation is near the ceiling of a target that we have there of 6–6.5%. That is a source of worry, not only for businessmen, also for politicians. We know that Brazilian voters value economic stability above all. So President Dilma Rousseff will have a very difficult task ahead of her to, at the same time, that gives some stimulus to the economy to control inflation. She is running for re-election.
And we'll keep our eye on that race, no doubt about it. Thanks so much for coming in. Always great to see you.